Hi guys, this is Mrs. Carraz. I'm very frustrated because it took me a long time to figure out how to start recording this video, but here we are. This is Chapter 16, Reconstruction in the New South. Oop. I forgot how to switch page. There we are. This is Section 1, Rebuilding the Nation. So we start with just a recap of the end of the Civil War. This is where we left off last year. The Civil War ended on April 9th, 1865, when General Lee surrendered at the Appomattox Courthouse. Remember that the North defeated the South, calling for an end to slavery and reunification of the nation, which was, you'll remember, the initial plan, the initial goal of the Civil War to start with. Many different approaches were proposed about how exactly we would bring the nation back together. We're going to look at a few of them today. So we start with Lincoln's 10% plan. This was proposed in December of 1863, which you'll notice is a good amount of time before the war even ended. You remember from way back last year that Lincoln wanted to see this war end quickly. He wanted to get the South back, reunite the nation, and move forward as a whole, as a united states. So it's not shocking that the goal of Lincoln's plan was to reunify the nation as quickly as possible. And here were the stipulations of his plan. Lincoln wanted 10% of the population of each Confederate state to swear loyalty to the United States. So think about that. We have a class of about 30 students. 3 people would have to say, Ms. Carraz, we're going to do what you want us to do in order for me to accept you as a whole back. Think what you will about that ratio. It's definitely a small percentage, right? Lincoln's other requirement was that the state government must declare an end to slavery. So we have our national constitution, but each state also has its own state constitution. Lincoln wanted, in writing, legally, there would be no more slavery in the states that were returning to the United States. But if a state did those two things, boom, they would then be welcomed back into the Union, no questions. Taking it a step further, Lincoln's plan offered amnesty to all former Confederates who were willing to swear loyalty to the Union. So this means that he was willing to pardon or forgive those people for rebelling against the United States government, so long as they said they were sorry and said they were loyal. Lincoln's plan didn't offer amnesty to Confederate leaders and military officers. So those people who actively fought against the United States and really led the fight against the United States, they could be punished for the things they did during the war. But Lincoln was willing to really forgive and forget with everybody else. We have another plan that develops in opposition to Lincoln's plan, and this is the Wade-Davis bill. It was proposed by radical Republicans in Congress and in 1864, so again, still before the war was over. They were trying to figure out what they would do when the war ended. In this case, radical does not mean like tubular, cool, awesome. Radical means extreme. Radicals have extreme views. They're like all the way on the other end of the spectrum. And what they wanted to do was punish former Confederate states. They rebelled from the Union. They went to war with what used to be their home country and their home government. Many men died in this war, and they should be punished, according to radical Republicans. So here's what radical Republicans wanted. They wanted 50% of the population of each Confederate state to swear loyalty to the U.S. So again, think about the numbers in our class. That would be about 15 of you instead of the 3 of you that would have to do that under Lincoln's plan. They also wanted state governments to declare an end to slavery, just like Lincoln wanted. And then that state would be allowed, welcomed back into the Union. But welcome might not be the best word for it, because according to the Wade-Davis bill, everyone who willfully fought for the Confederacy would be denied the right to vote once their state was back in the United States. Lincoln fought this bill really hard. Remember, he's all about reunifying the nation. And if we're telling people like, oh, you're a part of our country, but you don't have a say in how it's run, well, I was going to say that's not super American, but there have been many people who have been denied that right in the past. We'll get there, and at this point in history too, which we'll be talking about. But Lincoln basically thought that this would cause more bad feelings between former Confederates and the people who had stayed in the Union. So he really fought this bill hard, and it never became a law. So transitioning a little bit into some things that started to be done to help. So we have to address the issue, right, of how to bring the South and North back together. But we also have all of these people who were formerly enslaved, and now how are they going to live their lives as free people? The Freedmen's Bureau is one proposed answer to that question. So the Freedmen's Bureau was formed by Congress in 1865 to help freedmen, and freedmen are formerly enslaved people who were freed by the Civil War. So a few things the Bureau did. First, it set up schools. Often women would be the teachers in these schools, both black and white women. Remember, if we're flashing back again to last year, it was in many states illegal for slaves to learn to read or write. So when slavery is over, now you're in a position where you don't have the education that your white peers were accorded throughout their lives. So setting up schools was one way the Freedmen's Bureau tried to open more doors for freedmen, get an education, get more opportunities. They helped freedmen find jobs, paying jobs, that they could earn money and start to better themselves. I was trying to get something off my screen and I made it light up, sorry. And they helped resolve disputes between blacks and whites, which were obviously common. There's going to be a lot of racial tension at this time, and that is the understatement of the century. We're going to be looking in depth at that in class over the next few days, so hang tight. Moving on, another thing we're going to spend a good amount of time in class looking at is Lincoln's assassination. So on April 14th, 1865, just 5 days after Lee surrendered and actually ended the Civil War, Lincoln and his wife were at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. They were there to see a play. And Lincoln was killed by John Wilkes Booth, an actor and Confederate who felt that killing Lincoln was the only way to save the country. And we're going to look at some primary source material from Booth himself to see just kind of how deep-seated and extreme that feeling was for him. At this time, Lincoln's vice president, Andrew Johnson, becomes the president now that Lincoln has been killed, and the changes that Johnson brings about are going to be pretty dang extreme. But we will get to them later when we look at Section 2. Bye, guys.